Or, depending on whom you ask, infamous for opportunity to just talk about, well, stuff. I actually wanted to ask her something related to her Tommy Sotomayor interview. It's a topic I find really interesting. I'll start it off, the war bride syndrome. When you were talking about your relationship to your ex-husband and comparing yourself to these other women who just kind of it's like they're cutting through the dimensions, and the former husband ceases to exist, and just disappears completely out of life, and how you personally couldn't relate to that. You mentioned a scenario in prehistoric times, or not even in historic times, I would argue as well, up until recently actually, where raiding tribes, butcher all the men in the village. I mean, men, one of the reasons I'll postulate why men don't have this is because we didn't survive if we were caught in that situation. But yeah, and they take all the women away, and it's really an optimized survival mechanism on the part of women to to shut off their feelings and realign them to the new man, conqueror, whatever. It just seems to be a survival reproductive strategy that successful female ancestors of the past employed, because if they had resisted, then they might have been killed too. I mean, who knows? But I think this is very probable. Do you want to expand on this?
Well, it really is. I don't think it's a shutting off of feelings. I think it's a transference. It's like it's like transferring attachment. The quicker a woman could do that, or be convincing in doing that, the more likely she was to survive. And and any children that she had with her would be more likely to be tolerated. You look at even just the causes of infanticide in other animals, right? And with males, it's competitive infanticide, right? It's, I'm going to kill the offspring of the other male, usually because if a tournament male of a tournament species goes in and takes over, say, a pride of lions, or a group of gorillas or whatever, the females, if they have juveniles, if they have offspring, juveniles, infants, they won't mate. They are non-reproductive, and so what the male will do is he'll go and kill all of the offspring of the former male, and then they'll go into estrus, and he'll have his chance to have his kids, and the only way that that's not going to happen is if the incoming male is related biologically to the outgoing one.
Right, that's brothers, cousins, they can
something like that. With females, it tends to be sort of a "this doesn't work for me right now" kind of thing. Females will kill their own offspring. Males don't tend to do this in the animal world, but females will do this if there's a famine, or if the offspring is sort of biologically subpar in some way, sickly or whatever, right?
I remember when I was a kid, I had gerbils, and the mother gerbil several times killed her offspring. So
they basically say, I'm not willing to invest in this offspring at this time. Right. And it's not a conscious decision either. It's just sort of a bunch of proximal stimuli, right? Like water and food is scarce, or this kid isn't behaving the way this kid should, and then she'll just refuse to nurture it, or, just abandon it or whatever. That's it. It's all centered in what's right for me right this second. Actually, in both cases, but in her case, she tends to kill her own offspring. In his case, he tends to kill the offspring of other males, right? So, I mean, it's you look at that, it just and there's no moral judgment attached to
No, it's just descriptive. Yeah.
yeah any of this behavior. But when you look at human behavior and the fact that biological mothers are more likely to commit infanticide than biological fathers. It's usually filicide is where fathers start to catch up a little bit, right? But stepfathers are still more likely to abuse and kill
Yeah,
children.
I've seen some good data on that. That step parents in general are much more prone to abuse their stepchildren
And
than
kids are a huge investment, and they're often you're just not as willing to put up with as much from somebody else's kids as you are from your own. And so
that would
yeah.
be the conscious argument. I think there's a lot of this behavior. Most of it is subconscious. I mean, kin investment in general. Even siblings, so on and so forth. It's just people are generally speaking hardwired to invest more in genetically related people than
Yes.
children, siblings, even cousins to a certain degree than strangers. I mean, that's not a hard rule. That's a general rule. I know people hate generalizations, but and there are exceptions. But that is, I think, the general way people operate. I'd
Oh,
say.
one of the things I find interesting is that there's all kinds of moral judgments around racism and things like that. But when you look at how a biological father will sort of instinctively invest more resources and time and effort in his offspring if that offspring looks like him, right?
Hmm.
And then you think of kinship bonds and stuff like that, and you expand it outward, and you think people who look like I do, right? I think that generally there's just going to be an instinctive tendency to favor people who look
Absolutely. And
like you
people
do.
do tend to mate. I mean, I think the greater tendency is to mate within the own race and to associate. I mean, I think that's a very strong tendency of most people. Of course, you know, chicken or the egg. I mean, if you grow up in a neighborhood, in an area where you only have Caucasian people, uh, you know what are the opportunities of you getting to know black people or Asian people and so on. But I think you're right on that. I do think it's an extension of that sort of I see in this case sort of pseudogenetic material in you because you kind of look similar to me.
Yeah.
So let's hang out. And yeah, and I mean, when I was living in Asia and South Korea, where living in an industrial town in the middle of nowhere, and I mean, I'm a white guy with a shaved head. I mean, I got stared. I mean, it's it's it was strange because I'd never felt that in my life before. But I think that's very strong because you just notice that when you're in an environment like that where you don't look anything like I have green gray eyes. And nobody has that in South Korea.
Mhm.
And so I think that's probably an extension of that. I would probably agree with you on that.
Oh yeah, you just look different, and so people just automatically sort of, who is this guy? Do we trust him? Should we keep an eye on him? Like I think that that's just a natural tendency, and I mean, I really appreciate my youngest, especially up until this year, he was attending a school, and we were living in a neighborhood where, uh, like summer holidays, he'd be out hanging out with his friends, and it'd be, you know, two native guys and one kid from India, and and a couple of Somali kids. Their parents were first gen, they're second gen, and they'd all be hanging out, and one white kid, my son, right, all sort of running around in a pack, and that was really nice to see, and I think that that just integration at the earliest stage can be really helpful for and focusing on how we're similar rather than how we're different.
True, but I mean this is a complex issue because people males and females are different. Now, one thing I thought was interesting that didn't really get continued very much. I do want to get back to the war bride syndrome, but
Mm.
uh, you mentioned something. I tend to pick up on these little things, and Tommy Sotomayor mentioned how female black people, black women, female
Hmm.
black women. That's totally pleonastic.
Hmm.
Female blacks have higher testosterone levels, plasma testosterone, and you said yes, that's true. I mean, there are it's hard. It's hard to talk about any of this. You can't really talk about the difference between men and women. If you talk about phenotypical differences between races, I mean the races are different too. But
Hmm.
and when you say that, then all of a sudden you're a racist. Just if you say
Oh,
men and women,
it's
it's you can't say anything really.
like he's had so much criticism for being racist. That, and I have too. And like I said on his show, most of the criticism when I deign to speak or dare to speak about the black community in the United States, um, I get all kinds of accusations of racism from white people. And then I get all kinds of, thank God somebody's talking about this from black men.
yeah, yeah.
So,
But going back to the war bride syndrome, so this prehistoric scenario, obviously, our successful female ancestors, they probably employed this strategy and it worked because they reproduced and they made copies of their genes, and here we are talking, and
mhm.
because they were successful. And so let's fast forward to 2014, where the war bride scenario isn't. Well, actually, let's backtrack slightly. World War II. I mean, the very famous examples in France, in Denmark, in Holland, many countries the Nazis had conquered, where not in substantial number of women, sort of, well, they just went over to the winners basically.
Yeah.
So it's rather than saying this is just I mean, we see this. It's relatively recent. We see this.
Well, I mean, look at Shakespeare, right? Look at Lady Macbeth, and this is one thing I think Shakespeare understood women in some ways, but he really did not understand women in other ways. Because if Lady Macbeth, given her character traits, leading up to the big climax of the story, if she stayed true to character, she would not have killed herself. She would have stayed alive.
Absolutely,
She
absolutely.
would have blamed it all on
Yeah,
uh,
I've always thought that. It's funny that you think that too. Yeah, yeah,
and attached herself to the nearest available powerful man and continued to wield power through him.
yeah.
She
Power
would have
by
absolved.
proxy, and I think this is Macbeth. I mean, why not go on the tangent? Macbeth is such a perfect example, a literary example, whatever, of how female power operates and
Yes.
how it's sort of engaged in the world. I mean, Macbeth. I see to this day Macbeth as being pretty reluctant about everything, and it's only the nudging and the pushing and the constant essentially his wife's ambition projected through him, making him do all this stuff. I mean, she led him down this path of darkness, and it it's
Oh, she basically told him, if I would be willing to smash my child's head on a rock for you, and you're not willing to do this for me.
yeah. I mean, but that's a shit test slash guilty, and that's what women do, and it's
Mhm.
so weird that people look. I mean, I actually have a literary background, so I've been doing Willie Shakes for I don't know 25 years or whatever,
Mhm.
and once I became aware of these issues in male female issues whatever, it just instantly clicked. I mean, this is the paradigm of female power by proxy,
Mhm.
handed down to us over hundreds of years. I mean, it's been here it is, guys. Look at it. I think it's really uncanny. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've always thought the same thing. Why did she kill herself? But yeah, he understood quite well. But yes, getting back to the war brides thing.
Mhm.
Um, but so fast forward to 2014, even though we have relatively contemporary examples from World War II, I, I try to look at things as objectively as possible. I don't, I mean, certainly I'm so far gone into my MGTOWism that I don't really get upset about any of this stuff. But so I don't actually have an issue with, this behavior per se. That is women, just transferring their emotional, physical, mental energy to a new partner and just completely abandon the old one.
Mhm.
My issue really is it's not a moral issue. It's just that I don't think most men know this is how women operate. That's what irritates me, and I think we owe it to men at large to inform them of this behavior. But then, of course, we come up against the blockade of, well, men and women are basically the same, or there are no differences, or it don't make general. I mean, I've had to. I'll probably have to until I die. I have to make videos about don't generalize.
Generalization. Yeah.
Obviously, there are exceptions. I mean, there are always exceptions. So what? I mean, I've mentioned the video. I'm a male exception too. I'm more verbally talented than I am technically talented. Does that mean that that I buck the trend and no, forget it? Everyone's like me. I mean, it's just stupid. But
Yeah.
my issue then is and I want to kind of tie it to the MRA because you're an MRA basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I'm not. I've said it many times. I don't really agree with a lot of the tactics, but my issue, so say with the war bride syndrome, is that okay, here we have something that we understand. We can probably explain it on evolutionary grounds and what have you. It's just that men don't know that because that's not how men operate. I mean, as we said, the men who were in the conquered villages got killed, and maybe they were put into slavery, but they didn't have this opportunity to develop this mechanism.
Well,
Psychology.
and they would get put into slavery, and then the best way that they could be reproductively successful after that would be to get out of slavery, right? So to continue with their tribal affiliations and things like that, right? I think probably to be very, very successful, but or to protect what they already have. That I think is probably the best strategy reproductively for men,
Right, and
rather than
and you can
the
see
loss
this exactly.
again.
Protect what you have. You can see this manifested in the guy who just won't give up on his quote unquote girl. She's basically dumped him, but he's willing to cross the earth 3 times and do this and that for her. I mean, hell, in the past I'd been there too.
Yeah,
Eons ago, all this stuff seems like a distant memory, but I remember being together with a borderline personality disordered girl, and I mean, I essentially went semi-insane towards the end after 2.5 years. But I mean,
yeah, they'll turn you into crazy.
I just, I wasn't going to give up. I just kept on doing it, kept on doing it, kept on doing it. And comparatively speaking, you don't often see this kind of behavior in females. They're not the one. I mean, if they see a better opportunity, they're going to go for it, and they're much more likely to cut their losses. I mean, in fact. This is the cost benefit analysis. This is how she finalized the relationship when she finally put an interest. So, I've done the cost benefit analysis. Frankly, you're more cost than benefit. That's how when it was an important lesson to me, how the female mind works.
Yeah, yeah.
And men, generally speaking, don't have that. My issue with all this is, I mean, I don't get morally upset about bad female behavior. I'm putting bad in air quotes. It is what it is. We're animals just trying to figure out how to survive on this mud ball.
Yeah.
But it's the lack of information out there. It's that uh, most men don't know this. They just don't understand it. They don't understand. They don't know it. They think women are mysterious when they're anything but.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean,
Well, they're mysterious to them. I mean, and this is the thing is
yes,
like it.
Karen, but they can be understood.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. It's
Well,
just
but
not.
you have to look at them as something that is completely mundane. You have to look at women as just as human, just as flawed, just as, faulty, just as avaricious or whatever. You have to look at them
Which we're
as
perfectly capable
just
of
as
doing.
imperfect as men in order to understand them. And a lot of men are not willing to do that, because women are something that many men aspire to, love, worship, all of those things, right? And you can see that in masculine literature and,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
the art, like just the art that men have done, the poetry, the
Yep.
paintings, all of those things, the
I,
idealized
exactly.
woman.
I had a lit professor once at the beginning of the class. He said to us, "All great literature is about one thing: does the guy get the girl or not?"
Hmm.
So
No, and it's really, like you just sort of look at uh, how all of that plays out. Like I don't make a moral judgment about hypergamy. I don't make a moral judgment about say uh, men's more willing to take risks. That propensity leads more men to enact direct violence than women. It also leads more men to run into a burning building to save somebody than women. Like all of these things are just they just are, right? But what drives me crazy and what I will make a moral judgment on is how feminism has manipulated our propensity as human beings to care more about the well-being of women than about the well-being of men, right? They have manipulated and exploited that to convince us that we hate women.
yeah, it is. I mean, I don't see. Well, actually, I want to talk to you about this anyway, but I don't see the point arguing directly with feminists. But certainly, I mean, it's kind of human inclinations flipped on their head, and but as you said a long time ago in one of your classics, it's just as a random example. Women feel more endangered in a general sense than men do. Hence, they are in more danger. But this is how the female mind and the feminist mind operates.
Yes.
It's just everything's feeling. I mean, it's everything really is feeling. I was looking on a health forum the other day for an issue related to mine, and I saw there was a female subsection. Now, the normal section didn't have this. The female section had report offensive comment as an option to click.
Yeah.
It's
No,
it's
it's absurd. You look at what is one of the biggest limiting factors as far as opportunity goes? Fear of failure, or in some cases, fear of success, right? The fear that leads you to not try,
hmm,
right? Because it might fail or it might come to a bad end, right? And women have more of that fear, and they have more of that fear whether it's, going into a STEM field or trying to become climb the corporate ladder and become CEO. They have more of the sort of the anxieties and trepidations and am I doing the right thing and all of these things, and what if this doesn't work out? Running for political office is a huge one, right? Because it might all that effort might all come to nothing come election day, right? Now, you look at that, and what do you have feminists saying, right? Well, women need to be more fearful. They need to be more fearful because, they are in more danger. There is violence against women. Like you even, do I risk walking to the corner store at midnight to get cigarettes, right? Me, I do, right? Because I know that, 999,000 times, right? I can do that and not be assaulted, right? Because I know logically, right? And I've never been scared of walking at night because I've never had a problem walking at night. But feminists are telling women that that fear is justified. They're telling these
but
women
there's
that
some instinctive
the bed,
element to
the
it too.
monster under the bed is real, and all that does is increase fear and perpetuate the cycle of fearing failure, fearing danger, fearing this, fearing that, and not doing things based on that fear, not doing things they might otherwise do. That drives me insane.
I mean, but they're really just capitalizing on something that's already there. I mean, I
Of
remember
course they are.
walking through a really kind of rough neighborhood in New York with my last ex, and then just and she clung to me like it was like glue. You know, you could all she tensed up. You could just tell.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, I mean, I grew up in the freaking Bronx. I mean, I know what it's like to go through rough areas, and of course you're cautious. You know, you don't stare people in the face, but it's just this. It was just insane, and they're just. I think Barbara Russell put it really well in the video. You know, feminism is just a really good manipulation of human nature, both of male and female. That of the female nature, in the sense that they feel appealed to, and they feel that their fears are have been made real, and males who just kind of kowtow to everything women want and do and say.
Well, feminism is very validating to the lowest common denominator of female nature, right? It's yes, your fears are justified. Yes, all of the things that you feel are real and not just real, systemic, right? They're systemic. They're part of this huge system that oppresses you, right? So, I mean, it's nothing wrong with you, right? Or it's nothing you should be expected to get over and get on with life, right? It's something being done to you, right? And that is such a wonderful feeling for people who have those types of traits where they're, fearful, they're anxious, they're, shy, they have a persecution complex, all of these different things, right? It's very, very tempting to buy into that because now you have no responsibility for any of your own failures.
Yeah. But the question, my question, the big question is, you know, how do you counter that? Now, I want to talk about, I mean, this opportunity for everyone to know. I mean, obviously you're limited time, but I think the best way to counter that, rather than, I mean, I've made videos saying I think arguing with feminists is a waste of time. I don't think countering feminism is a waste of time. I think arguing with the folk, with the persons, with the people who are feminists is a waste of time. Now, what you originally did way back, you know, before you became the legendary Girl Writes What you are now,
Hmm.
with these videos invoking evolutionary psychology and things. These were for what they were groundbreaking, and you put it in the public sphere. And this is my take on it. For everyone who thinks for some reason that I'm just against countering feminism. No, I'm not against countering feminism, but I think the best weapon against it is information, and that kind of information you put out there, explaining things. I mean, that's the kind of thing that can really open up people's minds. But you have to go, you have to go with the science, though. You can't. I think if you just keep it on a sort of political, social level, the greater context is going to be lost, and people aren't going to really know the whys and wherefores. And that's what you did, which was so critical. I think, and yeah, I think that's really the direction things should go in, rather, or not even rather, but at least combine it with the political stuff.
You wake up people sort of one person at a time. Like what one thing that drives me crazy about my boyfriend, right, is he goes into a specific subreddit on Reddit that's devoted to, debating with people who are completely against the men's rights movement. And he'll post questions and he'll get into discussions and they just these things make him so frustrated, so angry, right? Because they'll go in one breath, they'll be like, well, the MRM doesn't do anything, like they haven't gotten anything accomplished, so blah, right? And then in the next comment, they say, well, and he'll say, well, that's because feminists oppose us at every turn. And then they'll say, well, that's because you're dangerous and misogynistic, right? And he's like, so what exactly do you want us to get accomplished if we're dangerous and misogynistic? Like, why are you criticizing us for being incompetent if we were competent in your mind, we would be, trying to make beating your wife legal or something like that, right? Like and it's completely counterproductive. And I can actually say, because he'll say, read this comment thread, and I will say, well, the next thing they're going to say is you're a whiny crybaby, and then bam, oh, man tears, blah blah blah, right? And I'm just like, like you have like, why do you go there? There are 2,700 subscribers to that place, right? Nobody's listening, right?
Yeah,
If you're going to argue with feminists, you do it in the comment section of a mainstream news article, right? You do it through mainstream news articles if you can actually get published, right? You do it where lots of people can see how ridiculous they are, right? You do it there. And that's that's the value that I find in arguing with feminists. I mean, I did a whole bunch of arguing with feminists prior to coming out on YouTube, right? And it was because I needed, I kind of wanted to understand how their wacky little brains work.
yeah.
Right?
But
Once I felt like I
I'm
understood
still
it,
convinced
I
that
moved on.
the MRM actually doesn't need to do a whole lot. I mean, well, I'm not part, but people who
Well,
are
they do.
involved in this, they need to wake men up. I mean, this is all going to happen on a cultural, subcultural level. I mean, the more men wake up, you're not going to need to change anything because if masses of men don't get married and do their own thing and go their own way, eventually there will be, an awakening and people are going to start, I mean, they'll, pull out articles and, what's wrong with these guys. But it won't matter because the guys who are doing this, the guys who are going their own way or doing whatever they're doing it with conscious knowledge. They're not going to fall for the, you're just a loser, can't get laid lines, and they're just because they know what they're doing, and
Well, one
that's
of one of one of the things though that I mean, like we really can benefit from. Like here's an article just came out today in Mother Jones on the women in the men's rights movement, and one of the profiles they did was Senator Ann Cools, and she has been she's a Canadian. She's the longest sitting Canadian senator, black woman from Barbados, and she has been advocating for shared parenting for decades with the support, the overwhelming support of the majority of the Canadian public. And we still do not have a shared parenting bill. And that is because lobby groups on the part, feminist lobby groups, single mothers lobby groups, all of these lobby groups have more political power than the majority of voters, the vast majority of voters. Something like 80% of Canadians support shared parenting after divorce, right? And yet we can't get a bill passed that makes shared parenting the default starting point when it comes to divorce because the political sphere is not. I mean, it will eventually, I think, succumb to the will of the people, but there's a lag there. I mean, just look at how long it took from for the Christian church to go from advocating hanging gay men to saying, it's okay to actually have gay weddings in your church, right? And we're still not there yet with all of the branches of Christianity, right? I mean, there's a lag, and yes, the public, always the public will changes before the establishment changes, because the establishment, no matter how imperfectly it serves the public zeitgeist or the public sort of collective will, it will eventually be forced to do that, right?
yeah. But I think I mean, this time it's different. Thinking of Barbarossa video, Humanity First and Foremost, where he stated, and I agree with him that, the day we see a politician or a bunch of politicians willing to put, single mothers out on the street, it's not going to happen.
Oh, but we did. We did. There's no reason to say that like we're incapable of going back there because we did used to do that. We did used to basically when 100 years ago when a woman got pregnant out of wedlock, she was sent on a retreat or to a place a clinic, far away because she had some health problem, you
Okay,
know,
but now
area
you're
that
arguing
she
for a
put up
kind
for
of
adoption. And if she wasn't willing to do that, that was her responsibility, that child, right?
okay,
Um,
but I mean, how likely is that kind of retrograde evolution? I mean, this is what a lot of people traditionalists bent. I know you're kind of a traditionalist yourself in some respects, and whatever. But
in some ways, like I think people should be responsible for their decisions,
I agree with you on that.
and I think that women have obligations as well as men, and traditionalism always held that men and women had obligations. They just had different ones. Um, so, and I think that if women want their traditional entitlements, they should be willing to put up with their traditional obligations, or they should give up the entitlements, right?
No, okay, I'm on the
So,
same page as you as that. I mean, I guess I don't want to go off on a tangent. I mean, as well as a lot of we don't like traditionalism so much because, well, personally, I don't like having obligations except to anyone but for myself. I have my own obligations to myself and those I choose to, but I don't like the world, thrusting these obligations upon me just because I was born with a dick and balls.
yeah.
I'm not hurting anyone. I try to take care of myself, and that should be it.
Hmm.
I shouldn't have to do stuff for the world at large just because I'm a man. I
Hmm.
think that's my issue with traditionalism, where you're sort of these things are sort of foisted upon you,
Yeah.
and I'm never gonna really be at ease with that concept. I guess that if guys want to do that, that's fine. But I know most MGTOW, or a lot of MGTOW at least, we don't like that aspect of traditionalism.
Of course not.
So because we just want to do what the fuck we want to do, we don't want to hurt anyone, just want to take care of ourselves. And that I think that's probably the major friction that exists with the traditionalist mindset and the MGTOW. But on the other hand, I agree with you. If you want to have be in that traditionalist mindset and you want your bills paid and blah 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 and be a traditionalist wife, then yeah, you better suck his dick and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
And make him a sandwich afterward.
making yeah, no, that's just part of the deal. I don't want to be part of that at all, but for those who do, and it's
Well, and,
been
and if you leave him, it shouldn't just be because he's not perfect. I mean that's really the one thing
yeah. Well, what's
that
funny about that one, Karen,
if
is that
you want to leave him and continue to benefit as if you were married, right? Through alimony,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because, and there was one guy I dated briefly between my ex and my current boyfriend, and he was like, she's not coming over cleaning my house and sucking my dick. Why am I still paying for her 15 years later?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because when non-informed people, or we call them blue pillars, whatever, talk about divorce and alimony and these benefits, and they say, well, the first thing they jump to, no matter what the country is as well, it doesn't matter the country, they say, well, surely he was treating her, beating her or cheating on her. Whereas if you look at least the surveys I've looked at in places like
Oh,
Canada, the States, and the UK, etc., Australia, it's usually I'm not that happy. It's not.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the grounds, and there was a big, big thing in Iran, a big outcry in the Western media about the Iranian government had decided to put conditions on women who choose to file for divorce. They have to prove cause. Men who choose to divorce don't have to prove cause, right? And the reason is that if a woman is divorced, right, and she is sort of entitled to what she would get if she had cause, she's entitled to a lifetime of financial support from the man. If he divorces for no reason, right, he has to pay her a lifetime of financial support, and he also has to pay out her bride gift immediately within 3 months, I think it is, right? Her bride gift, typically between 50 and $100,000, right, on average. That he agrees to pay her when they contract to marry, and usually he gives her a portion of that in gold jewelry or something like that, maybe $5,000 worth of gold jewelry, and she is free to claim the rest of it at any time, especially if they divorce, right? So, of course, no man in his right mind is going to divorce for no reason, right? But women, if they divorce for no reason and can collect all of these things, collect the full bride gift and also collect alimony, right? They can really cash in, right? So the government stepped in and said, you need to have cause if you're a woman to file for divorce, right? And and everybody was screaming that men don't need to have cause, right? Even though even after the law came in, two-thirds of marriage of divorces were initiated by women,
Yeah.
right? And here's the thing, though. One of the causes, actually, I'm going to list off a few of the causes um, that would be considered just cause for a woman to file for divorce. If he hasn't given her a child in the during the first 5 years of the marriage, if he's impotent, if he has a job that embarrasses her, that causes her shame, causes her embarrassment. So if he works at McDonald's and she thinks she's better than that, that's grounds for divorce and for her to collect all of this money,
Well,
right? But this is a huge injustice against women.
well, it's funny though. People, I mean, I've looked at this in detail. That the two-thirds stat is universal. It's not just in the West. It's in the Middle East. It's in Asia. I mean, this
Okay?
ubiquitous. Indonesia.
Yep.
It's everywhere. But I mean, getting back to the main point, people argue, well, this is because, female women are being incentivized. Yeah, no one's going to disagree with that necessarily, but I, I'm of the opinion, and maybe it's a radical opinion, that Evo-Psych, and there are a lot of people who criticize it, yet they can't come up with anything better, should just be part of rudimentary education. I mean, the birds and the bees, that's great, but we need to go to beyond that, because part of the reason we got into the mess that we call feminism and the deplorable state of things today, why, even if, I mean, I never wanted to get married anyway, but for the people who did and can't do it now because of the divorce laws, it's because we didn't really scrutinize human nature to begin with, and we're just kind of running blind, which is why, once again, your earlier videos were so groundbreaking and so essential. I think Evo-Psych should be part of basic education, because it's only with that kind of knowledge and understanding the sociobiology of human beings that we're going to really be able to crack this egg. Because we can, feminists argue with their gut feelings, but if you present evidence, eventually the evidence will crush them. And people want to know now. I mean, I remember that last year, the Toronto thing, it wasn't quite about Eve, but it was certainly, I remember this guy said he wanted to, understand why his friend killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so things of that nature. Maybe, if the MRM were to do seminars on Evo-Psych and, why men behave this way and why women, and there's so much information out there. I mean, look, I disagree with the tactics and stuff, but I mean, I'm kind of on the same page as far as the behavioral information goes with PUAs. I mean, it tends to be spot on.
Yeah. No,
Um,
what I find interesting is like there's a YouTuber out there, I don't know if you know of him, goes by the name of Blithering Genius.
yeah, I know him.
Okay,
Of him,
well,
sort of. Yeah.
one of the videos he did was the I think it was the institution of marriage or something like that. And he part of his explanation is that we have these cultural institutions, right? And the cultural institutions, the reasons involve a function that they perform and then a justification that people can understand, right? And the function that marriage performed was that it identified biological fathers of offspring and held them accountable for those offspring, right? That was the function. But the justification for it was if you have kids outside of marriage, God won't like you, basically. And so we grew out of the justification and we tossed the whole thing out without ever understanding what the function was. And you don't generally understand what the function is until after you've got rid of the institution. You don't know what you got until it's gone, basically. right? And this, I think, is what we're doing across the board with feminism is like we're making all of these changes, huge, huge social, legal, cultural, uh, political changes. It's like a huge experiment performed on the entirety of society, right? That we have no way to predict what the outcomes are going to be because we didn't understand why things worked the way they worked in the past. We don't understand why things were the way they were, right? And why in every single society that ever succeeded, there was the majority of people were in monogamous, lifelong monogamous unions, that the majority of children were raised by a mother and a father, that all of these things, right? Like we never looked at why that was before we decided that we were going to get rid of it, right? And so, I mean, like, it's just, I'm blown away by how much we are willing to destroy. I mean, it's like somebody working on their house, and ripping out wires and I don't know what's this for and what's this and this and this. Let's just rip it out, right? Without even knowing what it's for.
Yeah, but I think part of that, I'm planning on making a video on this if I ever get around to it. I'm intrigued by this. Is we're not marmosets. We are what I like to call we're social pair bonders, but physiologically speaking, we're still a tournament species. So that's always going to exist as a friction. I mean,
Always, always.
always. I mean, like I
It's
said,
the
we're
whole
not
reason
marmosets.
I
We're
in
somewhere between baboons and marmosets. But physiologically speaking, I think the strong evidence suggests we're primarily a tournament species. But we're very socially adaptable, environmentally adaptable. We can do the pair bonding thing. It's just that you make one little twist in the environment, and we're going polygyny, tournament species, guys killing guys, women, shacking up with the number one killer. I mean, it happens that quickly, and I think you mentioned that the black community is a perfect example. Black American community is a perfect example of that. It's just effectively a polygynous colony where the chief thug is gets all the plaudits and of course the women as well.
Yeah.
Um, and everyone else is kind of just left in the dark, and it doesn't take much to get there because we always have this friction. I mean, once again, so kind of we are socially capable of the pair bonding monogamous thing, but we are not purely. I think physiologically we're a tournament species, and so
Well, even marmosets they're social pair bonders, but they are not sexual. There's a fairly high rate of infidelity. And oddly enough, you look at species that are monogamous, where the male and female are sort of virtually identical
mm,
in size and behavior and all of those
mm,
things, right? Those are the species where the females will almost always twin. They'll give birth to more than one
yep,
offspring at
yep,
a
yep.
time. But you also look at it, they are the ones that the females will often just completely abandon their children and their mate and go off and take off with some other guy, right? And it's because they know
The
um,
father's going to be
some
there.
instinctive level that the father is going to
Yep,
be able to take care of those kids, right? So
yep.
they're just like, I'll just make some new ones with this guy, and it'll increase my genetic variability of my offspring, right? But I mean, you just sort of you look at all of these behaviors and you think, like a lot of MRAs, a lot of PUAs, a lot of people in this discussion, they think that sexual crypsis, the concealed ovulation, right, that came about so that women could basically marry the pencil-necked accountant and fuck the pool boy or the tennis pro, right?
Mm.
I don't think that's why that evolved. I actually think that evolved much earlier. Um, I think that evolved so that the proto-human female could cheat on the dominant male with that subordinate male who helped her with her kids and did all sorts of nice things for her, right? Because the dominant male, uh, when she's in estrus, he mate guards, right? And you see baboons doing this, baboon females going to great, incredible lengths to distract that dominant male, or sort of basically pull a let's you and him fight with another dominant male so that she can sneak off and have reproductive sex with her consort, with the subordinate male who's being really nice to her and her kids, right? And I think that probably is where that particular trait evolved, was to prevent the dominant male from mate guarding her, right? It just happens that it works out that that allows women to cheat on their sort of beta provider, I guess, as the terminology goes, cheat on him with the pool boy, right? But I don't think it's why it evolved.
Well, I mean, I've heard that opinion. I've heard the former opinions, PUAs. I think that's probably what most evolutionary biologists, psychologists think as well. That you're kind of reversing the order rather than whereas the others kind of you're going from alpha to beta, and most of them go from beta to alpha. But
Yeah.
um, that particular, I'm really kind of undecided on that one. But
Oh, I'm just sort of looking at the sequence of events, just as far as, did we have big brains before we started walking or after? And there's all kinds of new fossil evidence coming out about that. And if we started walking before we had big brains, then there would not have been a crisis of gynecology or obstetrics, with big brain babies being born to women with inadequate pelvises, and the whole, like, it's just the sequence of events that seems to make the most sense to me is that females would have evolved this to avoid mate guarding by the dominant male, and then it just pays off later on in being able uh, to expand their options, right? Genetically,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, while maintaining a safe home base. So, this is just what seems to make sense to me in the timeline. So,
But this is the thing. I mean, this is the kind of discussion that people all over should be having in open public. I mean, these are the kinds of things we need to talk about to understand how we got to where we are now, and what the problems are that we have, and how these problems arose. We need to. I mean, whether your postulate is right or someone else's, we need to talk about the origins of things, and how men are different from women and the reasons why. And we need to talk about sexual dimorphism and life choices. And we need to get away from the namby-pamby, we're all the same,
yeah. And, one of the things that drives me crazy about some members of the MRM is that they criticize me for going too much into evolutionary psychology. But
I get criticized for it too.
when you look at, I mean, something as fundamental as, we like sweet things because, right? Or we like sex because, right? We don't have babies because we like sex. We like sex because it makes babies. We don't eat sweet things because we like sweet things. We like sweet things because of the fact that if you did, you'd get more calories that were immediately available for energy, and also more things like vitamin C and all kinds of other nutrients, that folic acid and things like that, right? Like, that's why we like sweet things. Sweet things is the end point. Liking sweet things is the end point. Liking sex is the end point of the process, right? Of sifting through, the ones who didn't like sex didn't reproduce. The ones who did like sex did reproduce.
I've talked
right?
about this very often. This is just this difference between distal and proximate cause or ultimate. Yeah, people don't get that. People really focus on the proximate. They have almost no grasp of how often I've argued with people online or otherwise. Well, I have sex all the time. I don't want to get pregnant, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah,
You have sex because it feels good, proximate. You have
yeah.
sex because it leads to it's a reproductive behavior and it leads to in gene replication. That's why ultimately you have, I mean, and they just don't, they can't grasp it.
No, and it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating that so few people understand how all of that works.
And it's
And
so easy. It's not rocket science. It's
no,
easy.
yeah, it's really not. And so I mean, you look at it and you think, okay, well, that female chimpanzee is not actually thinking, you know, well, I can't really afford this baby right now, so I'm just gonna like toss it in the bushes, right? She's not thinking that consciously. It's just, she's the stimuli are going in from her
Oh,
environment, right?
instinct
And
neurotransmitters going off.
it's just a feeling that she has that, you know what? I don't want this baby right now. I just get it away from me, and off into the bushes she throws it, right? That's just how it works. And to think that we as humans don't we that we aren't subjected to that kind of thing, those
Well,
kinds of
I think
impulses.
we're just coming across. We're coming to the main issue here, then, Karen. I think, well, I think people's main issue with Evo-Psych, and I've yet to see people produce better arguments. So I've recently gotten a discussion in one of the comment section of my videos, and some guy said, "Oh, Evo-Psych's just BS." I said, "Well, okay, what's your counter? What's a better explanation?" And you really couldn't
Yeah.
come up with anything.
No.
But people feel offended. I think I my new channel is called Thinking-Ape, and part of it's a reason because I am an ape, and so are you, and everyone else is. Everyone else using Skype, and human beings are apes. We
Mhm.
don't like looking at ourselves as just another animal, and we are. We're special in the sense that cognitively we lucked out. We got the big brains, and relatively speaking, and that's really cool. But apart from that, we're pretty much just animals. We're just trying to mate and reproduce and get our genes out there. And people don't like looking at it. We want to feel special. We
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah.
to think, oh yeah, oh, I'm not a chimpanzee. Oh man, that's what antelopes do. I've gone through this a million times. I'm
Oh, I
almost certain about this is the reason because people get so offended. Oh wait, human beings aren't the outright say human beings aren't animals or say well that doesn't apply to humans even. I mean,
well, and one of the biggest prices we pay for these big brains, right, is the the capacity that we have to lie to ourselves,
yeah, I'm actually working on
right?
a video about this even as we speak. Yeah, yeah, that absolutely.
To say, like when you look at some of the like really, really deeply ingrained instinctive behaviors out there, like say they did a study on beer, right? And people who were extremely brand loyal to beer, right? I'm a Budweiser man. I never drink anything but Budweiser, right? And oh yeah, no, Budweiser is the best. Like I just love the taste, blah blah blah. And they would stick these people in a blind taste test, and they not only could they not say yes, this glass C, which has Budweiser in it, is the best one. They couldn't even identify which one had Budweiser in it,
Right.
right? And so I mean, you look at this, and like people don't even know why they choose things, why they feel loyal to certain things. I mean,
No.
I know why I feel
It's the
loyal to.
autopilot, but I think
Yeah.
we don't want to think of ourselves as creatures that are on a very fundamental level running on an autopilot that goes
Oh, just
back millions of years.
completely self-aware. Yeah.
And the key, if we really want to tackle feminism and all these social problems, it's the only way to do it, and I'm utterly convinced is to turn the autopilot off and start thinking about this stuff critically. It
Hmm.
doesn't it doesn't even certainly in the beginning intermediate stages doesn't mean that one theory has to be right or wrong, but we need to start looking at these issues from the perspective of a human ape. Why are we doing it? What was the original reason? How does it relate to the current? And
Oh, David
without
Geary, who wrote "Male Female: The Evolution of Human Sex Differences," in his introduction to that book, he lamented that as academics, right?
oh
We study the sexuality and the sex differences of every other species through an evolutionary lens, right? Except ourselves. Why is that?
Yes and no. You know David Buss, the evolutionary psychologist, probably, right? David Buss.
Heard the name.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, here I've read his literature. I've read, well, this is somewhat distantly related to Steven Pinker, who does a lot of stuff on evolution of the mind. And I mean, what I've noticed really is two things. One, there are guys who know what's going on, and two, they're either afraid to talk about it or they've kind of been compartmentalized their minds. I mean,
Oh, I
even
mean,
Steven
look at
Pinker, this
even
guy knows this stuff in his book. Don't remember the name of the
the
specific
blank
book.
slate.
Yeah, right, the blank slate. He states blah 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 blah, and women were horribly oppressed for thousands of years, and it's good that we've gotten rid
Yes.
of that. I mean, this dude, this is his cheesecake. This is what he's supposed to be doing. I mean, why is he stating just
Oh, I know.
crap like that? Why is he using this kind of language?
He wrote an entire chapter on why evolutionary psychology does not negate or invalidate feminism. And
Yeah,
I'm just like, well, okay, yes, in the sense that yes, everybody should be allowed equal opportunity in this particular environment, and you know, and that given this set of circumstances, that there's no reason not to, and that that just because in aggregate one group is better than another group at something does not mean that one individual from group A is going to be better at that something than any other given individual from group B. So there's no justification for discrimination there, and I totally agree with that.
yep,
He's basically saying
same.
that you can't use evolutionary psychology to justify discrimination. I'm totally on board with that. But and I remember, and I wish I could find it again. There was a clip of him talking about how it's inhumane to push equality to the point where you are attempting to coerce people to behave in ways that they otherwise wouldn't.
Yep.
That you just you know, if yes, there should be no barriers to women who want to enter politics, but we shouldn't be trying to force more women into politics or force politics to succumb to some 50-50
Yeah,
idea,
yeah, I remember that.
right?
But at the same time, he's kind of teetering on this, oh, but women were oppressed. I don't know
Oh,
if it's just
so many people.
lip service.
I think it's just basically what maybe he felt he had to do in order to
Yeah,
not
to get
be
published
lynched.
and yeah, not get lynched. You know, and David Buss is the same. I mean, this here's a guy who's this is his career studying, you know, human male female sexuality, and you know, then he starts going on this kind of this mystic talk, but I still believe in the power of love. I mean, do you really mean that? It's just it's strange. I mean,
I believe in the power of love the way I believe in the power of marijuana, alcohol, ecstasy,
yeah, I mean, if he
opiates.
said it that way, but he just kind of sort of made it was almost like a mystic statement. And I
Yeah.
think this is the problem that the academics who are actually, you know, credentialed about this stuff, at least in theory, either don't have the balls or the desire or both, or they don't agree, or I don't know, but for whatever reason, they're not coming out and bringing this out these extremely important issues of human intercourse, male female intercourse, that is social intercourse as well as sexual, in the public sphere, and so it's left to lay people
Hmm.
such as you or me to do it, and it would be really good if those guys came out, but then again we have all the pressure from feminism and just the
Oh, well, I mean,
academic trends and
I don't have a career to destroy. I mean,
yeah,
that's the really beautiful thing is that I do not have a career to destroy.
yeah,
And so I can basically say whatever the fuck I want.
yeah, same.
And I don't even really have a huge affiliation with anyone. I mean, like I'm you know, I participate in the Honey Badger thing. I am on the masthead at A Voice for Men, I think still, though I haven't looked for ages. But you know, I mean, like I'm
You're low
loosely,
risk, yeah.
but I would cut those guys loose in a heartbeat if I thought that that I was not allowed to speak my mind.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. So many. I had a guy. I don't know if you recall. I had a guy named Coltane, the late Coltane. He made some fantastic videos, just a few, and I thought he was gonna, start up his channel. So I gave him an endorsement. And I had this long talk with him, which I recorded, and then he just kind of gave it second thought. He's from Australia. And said, well, I don't know. I don't want this stuff getting out there. Maybe people hear about it, and then, I kind of work in a. He works, I think, in advertising. Could be problematic. Is that this political correctness garbage, which I despise?
Hmm.
It's just it, it's crippling people. It's paralyzing great minds with the potential to get valuable, interesting, um, intellectually enriching information out there, and people are just afraid to say it. I mean, myself. I'm just a nobody. I'm just a bum who makes videos, whatever. So I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about that stuff too much. But
Oh, well, I mean, like with me, I have never hid this from anybody in my family, an extended family, and they're all behind me, right? They all support me. And I sort of was a little bit leery of sort of coming out at work, but when I needed time off to, oh God, I think it was was it the Now conference, or maybe it was the New York Libertarian thing, or the Montana thing. But I needed time off, and my boss asked me why, and I told her, and I'm going to this, and here's what I do, and there was like she didn't even bat an eye. One of my other bosses, when I told her, she came up to me, she hugged me, she said, "I'm so proud of you. I was working at another place, and one of the cooks, he would come in, he would be covered with scratches and bruises and all of this. And his wife, I never saw a bruise on her, and he would be the one who'd be calling in sick, in air quotes, because he was spending a night in jail, right, or a weekend in jail, because she'd be beating him and call the police, and then he'd be taken away, right? And she says that's not right. And I mean, like, so I like everybody at work knows what I do. And then I finally told my boss after my real name came out. I told her, just to, FYI, right? If you start getting phone calls that you have a misogynist rape apologist on the payroll. And she said, "Oh, I'll just tell them that, we always knew Karen was a little odd, but at least she shows up for work. Never call here again." Right? So I mean, it's absolutely bizarre to me how, like, maybe it's just me and the way I present it and the way I
I
talk
mean,
about it, the fact that these people get to know me, and then I tell them what I do.
but you're a woman too. I mean,
Yeah.
that helps. That
Oh,
goes a
it totally
long
does.
way. I mean, I make every video under the YouTube anonymity thing, but I mean, let's say I weren't just doing the kind of things I do, like odd job, just getting by or whatever, and might happen one day. I'm trying to get back into teaching or whatever. I'm not gonna say, yeah, by the way, I make these
Mhm.
videos about because I mean, I don't talk about this with most people. I mean, I pretty much only talk about this in the internet world. I mean, when I'm out there, people are either aren't interested. I mean, I have a friend who he kind of gets it, but he just doesn't really care. So I just don't. He doesn't really judge me. But a lot of other people I know, if I talk to them about it, they'd be pretty shocked. I don't even bother. They can't even start with things like Evo-Psych and what have you. So.
Oh, the craziest thing is, like, when I'm flying to one of these things that I've been doing lately, I'll get talk if the person next to me is interested in talking, I'll get talking. They'll be like, "Oh, where are you going?" And I'll tell them, right? 75-year-old woman on the plane. And she's like, "Oh, I totally agree." Right? 50-year-old man. "Oh, that sounds really interesting. You know what? That makes a lot of sense." Right? And like, I've never ever had a conversation with a stranger about this and had them react badly.
Yeah, it might be a couple of things. I mean, you having a vagina helps immensely. It's just a
Oh, it
fact.
totally does. It makes them not scared of it. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Whereas, I mean, I get well, not so much anymore, but frequently, I at least used to. Do you get these private messages? Do you hate women? And I have to explain it. No, I don't. I don't. I don't hate women. I'm just describing something here.
Oh, I still get a few of those, every now and then I get a few messages, you hate women or you're not taking into account women's experiences. And I'm like, you
Well,
know, one of them cited one of my videos that Neoteny, right?
great video, by the
She
way.
says, you don't
Classic.
even take into account, how that impacts women. And I'm like, really? When I said that really sucks for a lot of men and women because for women, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
right? Like, did you miss that
I remember
part?
that part too. It's a great video, classic video. Everyone who hasn't seen that video, make sure you watch it. Girl Writes What Neoteny. Go on. Yeah,
Also, it has a picture of Betty Boop.
and that's right. It has a picture.
So that's worth the price of admission.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's for you. You're fortunate because you don't have to live a kind of shadowy existence. But for people like me or Barbarossa, I mean, I have another friend who used to make videos who just stopped making them because he was worried about, staying anonymous because he's kind of involved in government work. It's just,
Oh, God.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, that's an issue.
yeah, you can't. I don't know. I mean, I think I'm probably gonna have to keep this, if and when I just decide to, emerge from my shadow existence. Uh, yeah, I'll probably still do this, but I'm just not gonna talk about it in a public sphere where I can be overheard. I mean, I just have to, it's a corny, cheesy analogy, but when I'm in the Matrix, I'm gonna go along with it. Just
Oh, well, one of the things too that drives me crazy is, you get, I'm sure you get accusations of being sort of like a conspiracy theorist, right? I know I get them. Oh, it's all a big conspiracy to discriminate against men. Feminism is just a big conspiracy, and like
no,
that
I don't really get
that
that.
is not even remotely
I
my
can't stand
thesis,
conspiracy
right?
theorists.
That's not remotely my thesis. My thesis is we're going with what feels right on an instinctive
Yeah,
level.
yeah. It's all about the feelings, which is what
Yeah,
feminism excels in, what women excel at. It's about feelings, not,
yeah. And evoking emotion and using emotional arguments and even, basically positing in the scholarly or academic sense that emotional arguments are equally valid to logical ones. Like that they should not be discounted just because they are logical rather than emotional. And one of the things that drives me crazy is that in order to apply logic, you actually do have to deprioritize or or inhibit your the emotional center of your brain,
yeah.
right? In order to apply logic. So, you cannot say something is both emotional and logical.
You can't want to have a certain outcome. You have to be neutral about the outcome of what you're trying to logic through.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, totally.
I mean, and I think this is the problem a lot of, well, human beings in general make, but feminists are really good at it, and just
MRAs too.
MRAs. Yeah, it's just that I want this to be true, therefore, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of a backtracking rather than going through a
Or
sequence.
I want this to happen,
Yeah,
right? I want this to happen, and if this is going to happen, then the problem that's preventing it from happening has to be solvable, right? It has to be cultural, or it has to be social, or it has to be legal, or it has to be,
yeah,
one of these things, right? A problem of socialization or legal norms, or all of, rather than a problem with us,
yeah.
right? And
See, that's
and
why we need you to go. I mean, I know you go these talks and stuff, but I mean, you are the layperson, laywoman messenger who can take this kind of information, exactly the stuff you're saying right now, and present it to the public. So you're right. A lot of MRAs just suffer from this. I'm trying to think of the guy I sometimes used to talk to, John. No, gee,
oh, John Hambling.
no, 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 no. He's in Washington. The guy. Anyway, he's in my Skype list. He must be somewhere here. I can't remember his name. In any event, yeah, that getting this information, it's a lot deeper than just just fixing the laws. It's a lot deeper than this is something that goes back millions of years, and if we don't understand that,
Well,
we're
I
gonna,
mean, look at it this way, right? Because I think that society uh, used to compensate for these things, right? It
yeah,
used to compensate for these things in the sense that, okay, so you have Sharia law, right? Which is, you know, fairly ancient, and it says that a woman's testimony is worth half of a man's testimony in court, right? So you need two women to testify the same thing in order to be equal to one man testifying something the opposite, right? Now, the way it's spun is it's spun as we consider women inferior and untrustworthy, right? I think that's the justification, maybe. Maybe even under Sharia, it's the justification that women are less trustworthy than men. But I think the function, going back to Blithering Genius's function justification thing, the function was that women are more likely to be believed than men,
mm,
right? And so we have this, they gave men a handicap, right? That, you know, he's less likely to be believed in a court setting, right? Testifying, you know, in opposition to what a woman is saying. And so we need to compensate for that, right? Another one would be the Orthodox Jewish edict that in professional matters, even if women are allowed to be professionals, men and women be segregated. There was a feminist who was bitching and moaning to me about how there was a gynecological conference in Israel run by Orthodox Jews, and women were allowed to attend, but they weren't allowed to be panelists or speakers. And I'm thinking, okay, so what could possibly be the function of this particular edict that is got to be it's got to be about 4,000 years old, right? Well, think of it. 4,000 years ago, if you had Rebecca Watson pulling what she's been doing in the atheist community, you'd have a pile of dead male bodies.
yeah. And I think this is a very interesting thing as well because someone one of my favorite videos you've done had been the whole atheist you asked for it. I'm just 110% on the same page as you, and I mean this is why I just as hardcore an atheist as I am, I just have no association with these people. But looking back at say the great monotheisms, it's really interesting how they in some way, shape, or form, some way they strove to create a kind of nature related equality in the sense that this is how it is, and so we'll try to fix things so they're okay for men, and we'll also try to fix things so they're sort of okay for women. So both sexes can get something out of it. That's kind of
Yeah.
and but see this is I think how they got down the whole atheism plus thing is that you look at this and people, I mean, Dawkins talks about this and Sam Harris and all these guys, Hitchens, and all religions are misogynistic and blah blah blah. I mean, so if you that's the standard line. Whereas, I mean, I have nothing to do with these atheists. I can just say, okay, it's all a bunch of bunk as far as the metaphysics are concerned. But you can
Yeah.
look at Sharia law, you can look at Leviticus, or
The
what's
Ten
what's
Commandments. Yeah.
what's the reasoning behind it, rather than just saying, oh, it's just misogynistic.
Well, I
Um,
mean, look at right now, right? Oh, you know, false rape accusations are only 2% of all rape accusations, blah blah blah. And oh, we can't penalize those women because it might deter real victims from coming forward, blah blah blah. One of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not bear false witness. Why do you think that was?
yeah,
Right?
and
Because so many crimes back then resulted in, you know, being executed,
yeah, I mean,
right? And shot.
and the reason why the ancients it's clear. I mean, the reason why the ancients, be they the Greeks, I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're so much more in touch with human reality and human nature because it was there. I mean, as you said, yeah, a girl says she gets raped, tribesmen pick up the spears and start tossing them, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
or the entire thing, you know, oh, women weren't always considered pure. They were considered temptresses, blah, 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 blah. like, do any of these feminists ever consider that maybe the whole idea in the clergy of women as temptresses might have actually been based on reality, right? That it might have actually been based on the experiences of priests. Because you know what? I bet you Mick Jagger has a lot of women throwing themselves at him. I bet all kinds of powerful men these days have all kinds of women throwing themselves. As Bill Burr said,
I mean,
they're like Braveheart, paint in skirts, faces painted, running down the hillside, ready to jump on your dick right in front of your
the
wife,
oldest poem in the world, the
right?
Epic of Gilgamesh, the goddess Ishtar, when Gilgamesh gets all famous and everyone knows him, basically wants to fuck him and he refuses. It's just, this
Yeah,
stuff
but
has been there
look
forever.
look at what the clergy was back then, right? I mean, if you have a village of like 150 people, the most powerful person in that village that any any regular person would have any kind of reasonable access to would be the priest.
Yeah.
The Lord, no, you don't even see him. He's just some faceless guy who lives up in the castle, right? The priest is the only powerful man that people have any kind of access to, right? And you think that women weren't kind of going with their instincts and throwing themselves at those guys?
Yeah, but this is why this is how it all got to atheism plus ultimately is that you know trying to be logical as you said is setting aside your feelings on on matters what and not wanting an outcome or not wanting something to happen and atheism really in general has been it's become this thing where oh okay there's religion bad and then oh misogynistic because without I mean these are the people who are supposed to be thinking critically about science and the world and blah 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 and here and for the most part completely suspended their reason on these issues.
Oh, of course,
And,
wet streets cause rain,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like it's they can be completely on point and completely logical and rational when it comes to discussing one topic. And then when it comes to another topic, they can be completely
compartmentalization.
irrational and out to lunch.
Yeah, I've
Um,
seen it with Dawkins, with Sam Harris, with Hitchens to a degree. It's just
well,
and
there's hope for Dawkins because he's been taking a beating from feminists lately.
well, yeah, but but Dawkins, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm thinking, either he's going to cave in completely and just didn't he cave in after the original elevator gate nonsense? I don't remember.
Yeah, but he recently posted something along the lines of violent stranger rape, like being held at knife point and raped by a stranger is worse than, being raped by, in a dating setting, right?
Hmm.
And to say that one is worse than the other is not to say that the other is not bad. Like it's not to say that the other is okay, right? And he posited it in the opposite direction. He said, because of the loss of trust when you're violated by somebody that you perceived as a friend, right, or a potential partner, right, getting raped in a dating setting or by a friend, an acquaintance, is worse than being raped by a stranger at knife point. Just because you say one is worse than the other doesn't mean that the other isn't also bad, right? And he just wanted to basically posit that we should be able to ponder these questions, these extremely emotionally loaded questions, in a dispassionate manner, and the only way you can actually come to any rational
Man,
conclusion
that dude
or
knows
do
the
anyone.
deal. Dawkins knows.
Yeah,
He's a freaking
okay,
zoologist. He knows exactly what's going on. But
but
he's
okay, he took a pounding from feminists, right? Because according to them, according to feminists, rape is rape is rape is rape is rape is rape is rape. I rape is just as bad as being gang raped, right? Like, according to them, they're all equally bad, right? They're all equally blah blah blah, right? So I mean, like, he put himself in the firing line, and he got
to a degree. Let's see how far he goes. I mean, if
ripped
he's
apart.
Thunderfoot, I don't know. He's got a huge reputation, and if he says the wrong thing, he could really lose a lot of his female fan or subscriber base, whatever. I don't see
Well,
it.
that's why he still puts the word feminism in quotations.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we're gonna see anything really mainstream. I mean, the closest mainstream you're gonna get is Thunderfoot, who makes these videos. But then Thunderfoot's a hilarious guy, really bright guy about some things. And then he gets in this interview. You know who Anna Kasparian is, the Young Turk? She's this
Yeah.
ditzy girl with probably has a two-digit IQ. Who knows? But anyway, he just starts kissing her ass. He just reverts to the primal behavior. Here's this, he's a chemist, and he makes fun of feminism via these really pointed, well-made arguments, and he's just kind of reduced to the "oh, you're so pretty, Anna" kind of thing. It's
Oh, well, I thought it was hilarious because he did a Google Hangout with her or something, and she was talking about how, it still sort of upsets her, but she tries to ignore it when people make comments on her appearance and how pretty she is and all of this, right? But she was like, it was Saturday morning. It's my day off. It's Saturday morning, and she's in full makeup with her hair done, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you just have to look at the reality, right? And the reality is that you're a woman. And what makes you sexually attractive is appearing youthful, right? Okay. And appearing pleasant, okay? That's what makes you sexually attractive to men. That those things, when you come to, being opinionated, wanting to be taken seriously, wanting to be perceived as having wisdom and experience and a right to have a valid opinion on an issue, on a serious issue, all of those things work against you. They do, as a woman.
Yeah. That said, her opinions are really stupid. Usually, she's
Oh, often,
terrible.
yeah.
She's not well informed. She just kind of blathers. Oh, she's terrible. God.
But I mean, how is it so difficult for women to understand that things are just the way they are? Things are just your sexual. Like, why do you think wrinkle cream is like $1 billion industry, right? It's because women and like and with men, it's the touch of gray, right? It's I'm going to use this hair dye that'll leave a touch of gray in my hair because you know, women have different criteria for finding men sexually attractive. And a lot of those criteria are based on, stability and experience and, being able to get things done and not necessarily on how young they are, right? But for men, youth is a major attractor, right, in
Yeah.
women. And, but youth doesn't go hand in hand with having a well thought out opinion on anything,
No,
right?
it's
And
completely
so if you
irrelevant.
want to be taken seriously for your opinions, maybe, and okay, it's not fair, right? Oh my God, it's not fair. It's just reality. Maybe you need to scale back
Yeah. I
on
mean,
the makeup and the sexual
I-
attractiveness part and just, state your
the
opinion and
whole
not
the whole
try and
it's
be
not fair
cute.
thing. I don't really get that. I mean, I get that. I would get it if I were 8 years old, or maybe even 13 or 14 or
Yeah.
15. But I mean, there nothing is fair. What's actually fair in life, apart from the fact that we all die? There you go. That's fair. But I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's nothing is fair. So complaining about something not being fair, I mean, you have to assess things for what they are, and deal with them. I mean, and someone like she's just an idiot. I can't stand her. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but the Young Turks is a joke, and she contributes to the joke. But it was just so funny to see Thunderfoot sort of melt, and oh, it's a pretty girl, and
Mhm.
eh, and I really felt almost as if here's a guy who's really smart, just kind of really lowering himself almost to talk to this person. This is
Oh, it's not lowering himself. He's just acting on instinct.
Yeah,
He's
no,
he's just
I realize that. I realize that.
like that's the really sad thing. I mean, like it's it's just how we are, right? And it's just how so many men are. I mean, like, if you look at um, Paul Elam saying, a lot of men, a lot of MRAs are one blowjob away from, becoming blue pill again. And I think
I think
in
that was
some,
Barbara Russ who said that originally, but anyway.
oh, maybe, okay. Oh, maybe Paul was quoting him
I'm sure he stole it
in
from
a,
Barbara Russ, but no worries.
but no, it's absolutely true. It absolutely is. Um, that you look at that and you think there is so much of why we do the things we do and why we are the way we are that we don't really understand and that we have no control over,
Oh, man, talk
right?
about having,
And so I mean you sort of look at that and you just I mean it as much as I try to, talk, like I ask, why do you talk to those people? Why do you even bother? Oh my God. Now she's going to say this. And then 5 minutes later, there she is saying the same thing that I just predicted she would say, right? Like, you're not going to change their minds. Nobody's going to see it except for people who already believe the way these people do, right? You're not accomplishing anything other than making yourself frustrated and angry, right? Um, like, why are you? But I totally understand why he does it. I mean, he does it because he can't help himself, and he can't help
Yeah.
himself because of all kinds of things, right? And so, I mean, sort of look at it, and you think if we just sort of had a better handle on the way we are, why we are the way we are, how we actually feel about things instead of allowing ourselves to be tricked into thinking that we hate women just because we don't love them enough, right? Just because we don't love women 20 times as much as we love men does not mean we hate women, right? And,
And that itself is a bit an odd statement because I think Warren Farrell pointed this out a long time ago, but it's true. I mean, you don't notice 90% of the guys because those guys are not noticeable. I mean, we love the guys who are doing something, but the minute you stop doing something, you're worth jack shit, and no one's going to pay attention to you.
oh, it was like Erin Pizzi and I when we were on the radio one day, and she asked me why are so many, why Men's Rights Edmonton, why Allison Tiemann in Saskatchewan, right? Why is it in these western provinces of Canada when there's, in Toronto, things are even worse for men legally, at least in family court, right? The Ontario Child and Family Maintenance Agency is notorious nationwide, right? Um, and I was just like, one of the reasons why is that Alberta and Saskatchewan have a resource economy, and women are individually dependent on men who work the power lines, they collect the garbage, they
Oil.
do all kinds of physical work, right? And these women, and even if they're not married to one, they have a brother who does that, works as on an oil rig or something like that, right? Or they have a father who does, or they have a friend who does, right? And so they see those men, right? They see them. They understand that those men exist as human beings, right? In Toronto, most of the men are academics and professionals, and Toronto is basically the bulk of what would be considered Ontario. They have the most political ridings in the province, like it's a huge urban center, right? And most of those men that women would notice or be married to or have a brother who does that or whatever, most of those men are professionals, they're academics, they're social workers, they work for the government, all of these things, right? And so they don't even, if they notice the construction workers, um, you know, knee deep in water in February fixing the water main in the middle of the road, it's they're seeing them not as a man, they're seeing them as an inconvenience. They're seeing them as an obstacle, right? Those men are an obstacle to me getting to, the hair salon or to my job or
Yeah.
whatever on time,
Really
right?
interesting observation. I think it's quite plausible. I mean that this idea that in large urbanized areas where you don't have the resource driven economy, such as in Alberta, Toronto. Yeah, I mean it's the same thing in New York. It's just the guys working on the tracks in the subway to fix something are just a hassle because they're going to make you late. It's. I think it's a lot easier to drown out identity in general, but specifically male identity and all the essential things that men do in
Yeah.
that kind of environment. So that is, and it's also, I mean, I hate to say it, a lot more liberal climate tends to be in these large urban centers. It's
Oh, definitely.
you're
Definitely.
gonna have a lot more people on the left,
Well,
than
I think the more dependent a given population is on the physical work of other people or themselves, right? So even like because Edmonton's the greater Edmonton area is I think 1 million people now, and Calgary is about the same, right? So I mean these are not small urban areas, but we absolutely are aware of the guys up in Fort McMurray who work in camp on 4 days off, right? And they work in every kind of weather, outdoors, right? And, work in the oil rigs, all of that stuff, right? And that is our bread and butter here in the city. Like we understand that, we have, as far as the West goes, we have all the trees and all the fish and all the wheat and all the cattle, right? And so much of the economic productivity that we generate in the West, I mean, I think Ontario, as far as I know, is considered a have not province. In the sense that Alberta and British Columbia, I think, being the only have provinces at this point, we have to make equalization payments to all the other provinces. We have to share our money with them, right? Because they don't have generate enough economic activity to balance their own budget,
hmm.
right? And so, I mean, like, but we understand where all of this money is coming from, right? And so, even if we're living a comfortable life in the city, we understand because we know somebody who's working the oil rigs, or we know somebody who's, doing non-destructive testing on pipelines out in the middle of the bush, right? Or whatever, right? We know
Yeah, and I think there's a strong correlation between them. I mean, speaking on the issue of safety, I mean, we know historically that the safer things got, I mean, the more you got of feminism, basically, and or rather, it was only up to the point where things were so safe that you had that kind of force that called itself feminism emerge. It seems, and once again, getting back to the ancients, I mean, the people who had to live under just life or death circumstances on a day-to-day basis really were in touch with human nature a lot more because they had to be.
yes,
And the further along we've gotten in modernity, the more civilized we become. The great urban centers, places like New York, London, Toronto, these are the places where it's just kind of all smeared, or you don't see it anymore. It's not nearly as dangerous as it used to be thousands or even hundreds of years ago. And I think this is one reason why we've kind of lost touch with what we are and who we are, because it's not a survival necessity. It's kind of like an intellectual oddity, or it's just something you study. I mean, that's what I read books about Evo-Psych. Yeah, but I mean, do I need it to survive? No, I just put the coin and then subway car goes off and whatever. It's I think that's critical, and I think this is related to what you were saying. Maybe it's because you're sort of in the outback. I mean, yes, you're resource driven, but there obviously some working on an oil rig is in a much more life or death situation than someone working in an office in downtown Toronto.
oh yeah,
So this is my concern as well, is that the more I call this mechanization effect, the more mechanized we become, the more, well, the safer we become, the more we use our iPads, the next generation, maybe we'll have, image conferences all of a sudden, who knows? It, we're going to get further and further out of touch with what we are, that is human apes, and how we got here, and we're going to get even more confused than
Oh,
we ever were before.
there are layers and layers and layers of external things in between us and ourselves.
Yep.
And the more it builds up, the more we are free to actually be ourselves, but lie to ourselves, right? And say, it's not because this is what I am. It's actually for a completely different reason, right? Like the capacity of people to rationalize their decisions is astounding. And we're talking like just day-to-day decisions. 95% of the stuff we do is autopilot.
Yep.
And a microsecond later, right? Sometimes a nanosecond later, we decide why we did that. Right? We logically say, "Oh, I did that because."
Yeah, we
Right?
don't even have, and most of the time, we don't even have a slightest clue as to the real causal link there.
Oh, well, because we don't. I
We
mean,
don't. No, we don't have that. We don't have access to the neurons firing over. We just,
the
say we.
pantyhose experiment, right?
Yeah.
That Robert
Robert, yeah.
Sapolsky in
Yeah.
his human biology course, right? He says, people were shown an array of different pantyhose, right, and asked to pick the one that was the highest quality, and something like 80% picked the last one they looked at, even though they were all the same brand of pantyhose, and they not only picked that particular last one that they were shown as the highest quality, they had lots of reasons why, right? Oh, it's just more sheer, and oh, it just, the weave seems more regular, and all of this stuff, right? Than the other ones. They invented reasons why they behaved instinctively, right? They
Incidentally, I
invented
don't mean to interrupt, but
plausible reasons.
Sapolsky is another guy who knows better. Obviously, I mean, I
Mhm.
like a lot of what he has to say, but man, he seems to be firmly in bed with the sort of feminist PC crowd.
Of course he does.
Uh,
Everybody has to be. If you want to have a career, you have to
yeah, but so my question is, say a
stay.
guy like Sapolsky, who definitely knows his stuff. I mean, he's the baboon man after all.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff on stress. Anyone who find out about his stress experiments with the baboons,
And go
really.
watch his Stanford University
Yeah,
behavioral
I've been
biology
going
course.
through them off and on systematically. Well, I mean, so he makes certain statements, and I think, well, is he saying that because he's got to say it, or does he actually believe it? Or I mean, I don't really know because academia has become, when it comes to the human sciences, has become a kind of, yeah, I mean, you can't really be objective. You can't really do science because you might offend
It's no
someone.
consent zone.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
It really is. Look at Larry Summers having stepped down as
yeah,
president
yeah,
of Harvard.
yeah. Those wow, 2005. Yep, yep, yep. I remember. I remember. Yeah. I mean,
Like
and
just and nothing he said was objectionable. And 90% of the people that I talked to about that, they said, "Oh, well, he said that men were better at math and science than women." And I said, "Oh, really?" And I linked to his actual, I quoted him exactly, and I linked to the transcript of his speech, and I said he did not say that at all, right? But people just, the press reported it in a certain way, people were spinning it in a certain way, and people just believe it. And I had several people go, even a couple of feminists say, "Wow, you're right. Like, I don't understand why he was forced to step down." And I'm like, because nobody wants to hear that there is an impediment of any kind that is unsolvable to
yeah,
equality.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's you really to point out how ridiculous some of the stuff is. People, I mean, it's It's like me, I'm 5'9", right? I mean, even if I had the athletic talent and were 20 years younger, I'm never going to be a freaking basketball player. I mean, a
No.
professional. I mean, it's just, this is not how the world works. I mean, there's certain things that are just the way they are. And if you're, 5'9" and not very athletic like I am, you're not going to be a professional basketball player no matter how much you want to be. It's I talking about all these layers. I mean, that's the challenge, Karen. But how do we? Well, how do we have to try to peel away the layers? I know that's what you're doing in part, but I mean, and I see you in when I occasionally listen to Badger Radio. I don't do it too often, but in confrontation, in intellectual confrontation, at least with what's her name? The one who does all the
Al-
cartoons.
Allison.
Allison, right? Allison. She's really big on this whole cultural stuff, and she doesn't really buy into the Evo-Psych very much, is my impression.
She and I have a whole bunch of philosophical disagreements. We definitely don't agree on everything, and there are some things that I think she's way off base on, and some things that she thinks that I'm way off base on. But we managed to set aside our differences just as far as the work
Can
that
you
we do.
just cite, just for the audience, maybe one prominent example of a point that you both are just on the opposite pole on?
Well, one of them is, she, uh, and there is some evidence suggesting that because humans and domesticated dogs, right, evolved for quite some time as partners,
Mm.
that that you might have some things in common with wolves, uh, maybe above and beyond what we have in common with chimpanzees. I don't agree with this. There are some things about domesticated dogs that are very interesting, such as the way they make eye contact.
Agreed. Yep. Yep.
They make eye contact in the exact same way that humans do. Um, but in fact, if a dog doesn't make eye contact, and this is something that I remember from a documentary on breeding Rottweilers in the mountains of Germany or something like that, some monastery that breeds Rottweilers. If a dog won't make eye contact with a human, then they just put it down because it's going to be dangerous. Um, like that, there are some parallels there, but to say that the the species to whom we are most closely related, our common ancestor was 2 to 6 million years ago, right? That we are not more similar
Yeah.
than us and wolves. It
It's
just
really weird. I mean, not only
just
that,
doesn't make any
I
sense.
think prehistorically, it's a topic that interests me as well. The domestication of the dog. Rough estimate somewhere between 30 50,000 years ago. I mean, we were
Yeah.
already Homo sapiens. There's no way. We were Homo sapiens for a long time before that. There's no way that similarities to well, that's a really odd point.
Oh, like there are just some things that, and also I think she believes in a higher power, and I don't. So, um,
Yeah.
there's an aspect of that there, and and there are just some things that, with her that I feel like, I mean, because some of the work she does is extremely brilliant, especially with agent object analysis, and as far as men and women go, and threat narratives, absolutely top notch work on her part, is just basically explaining how those things work. But on the other hand, there are some things that we just fundamentally disagree on, and I think that uh, what we disagree on is what's solvable and what's not, right? And what's innate and what's not, and what we can change and what
What's
we can't.
solvable and what's not. I mean, and here we come to. I mean, I look at your function with the MRM. You're kind of Sisyphus. You're familiar with the
Uh,
myth of
the
Sisyphus.
the Yeah, yeah.
The guy who defied the gods and was condemned to push the rock up the boulder up the hill. I mean,
Yeah.
speak honestly or don't, but you're too smart, you're too aware of human nature. I mean, you know what's going on with us to not realize just how monumental the task of the MRM is, and what I mean. Is it kind of the noble fight for you that you know needs to be fought, but it probably can't be won, or what is it exactly?
Well, I'm not invested in winning.
Yeah, I think you've said this
Um,
before, yeah.
like because I don't know. I have no idea what a utopia, an ideal society would look like. And I've had people email me, like, what do you think would be the ideal society? What would it look like? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Um, like, I don't even know what's possible. I'm just trying to understand. I was actually watching a video. Somebody sent me a video of an interview with Hannah Arendt,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, yeah.
and she said that for her, she doesn't care. She doesn't care how what she does affects people. She really doesn't. Her goal is to acquire knowledge and understand it, right? And I was listening to that and I was thinking, well, fuck, that's kind of where I'm at right now because I don't even know if I affect people, and I know that I do. I don't know how that's going to turn out overall.
No, you
No
can't know.
idea. I don't know whether it's going to make any difference or not, right? I know it's made an individual difference in a lot of men's lives because I know that a lot of men have actually emailed me and told me that I saved their life. Um, that they were suicidal, and once they realized that somebody understood what they were going through, and a woman at that, right, somebody who is not a man, that it reassured them and made them feel like they weren't crazy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not crazy and I'm not a loser, right? There's not something wrong with me, that these things are really happening and it's not necessarily my fault, right? So, you know, I get a lot of that. Those are really wonderful to hear, but I have no idea what impact on wider society I'm going to have, whether it's going to be for good or bad or whatever.
So it's a thirst for knowledge, basically.
It really is. I
I
just want to
can.
understand what's going on,
Yeah,
and
me
I
too.
I
Me too.
want to wake people up as to what's going on. I want people to understand, like how here's how you were convinced that you hate women,
Yeah,
right? When you actually love women, you
yeah.
do. You love women just like everybody else. You love women. You care about them. You want them to be okay, right? Here's how they convinced you that you actually hate women.
Yeah, I think that's kind of on the same page I'm on. I'm in a quest for knowledge. I certainly want to help men, but I think the best way of helping men is just informing them of, as much of what's going on with the human ape as possible.
Hmm.
And, they can take that knowledge and do what they want with it. But I'm convinced that if there's going to be change, it's going to be a change that's based on a kind of underground current of, and I'm using underground to describe the YouTube, internet flow of information, and lay people actually talking about these issues, the Evo-Psych, and talking about the war brides and ovulation and all this stuff that just is not on the table in normal public everyday public discourse officially or even everyday discourse, because that's really what's gonna make people aware. I mean, I think men have this. Men are amazing. I think far more so than women. Men have this amazing capacity for potential, at least, for rational thought. I mean, you look at the statistics on superstition, religion, and women always outnumber men in that regard. But
Always.
when it comes, always, yep. Next video I'm working on is and talk about that as
But then
well.
you look at the religions that are based on patriarchal constructs and the ones that are based on matriarchal constructs, and which ones give birth to civilizations?
Yeah,
Mm.
but you know, I'm going with this. So yeah,
Sorry,
it's really
just had
late.
to.
It's very late here. It's 2330. It's 11:30 p.m. So so yeah. I mean, I think that for me that's the key is getting that information out there because that's how you're gonna. Yeah, men have that ability to understand these things, but when it comes to women, they're hampered. They have that, as Barbara also coined it, the male mother need. They have that desire to worship the vagina, just deify women effectively. And the minute they can get past that and see things objectively, so women are just the same animal as you. They just have a vagina and they behave in X way, and you behave in Y way, and here's how it works. Yes, you can understand it in these quote unquote cold, rational terms, and it's actually gonna help you.
Mhm.
It's gonna actually liberate you. You're not gonna feel chained to this anymore. I mean, because I just a couple hours ago, I got off chatting with a friend in the UK who's becoming a doctor, and a really cool guy, and he likes lifting, and I like. So we talk about, and then he said, "Oh, this girl," and he was telling me, "This girl I just met, she's everything I wanted her to be. Do you want to see a picture?" And I just told him, I said, "No, I don't care," and I told you my thoughts on it. It's just that. So when it comes to this one issue, he just turns into this kind of. This
Oh
this
yeah.
is this is the one weakness men have. This is
Oh
the kryptonite. Get
well,
rid of it.
this is actually one of the things that I think because men it is socially enforced, but it's also a biological
Oh
thing, in
yeah,
my
yeah,
opinion, that they don't show their emotions through emoting. They show their emotions through actions, right?
yeah.
So instead of, saying, "Oh, I feel so bad for you," they'll help you carry your groceries, right? um Things like that, right? They show them through acting, they show them through actions, they don't show them through crying and being all gushy and effusive and unctuous and all of that, and generally men who behave in that way, sort of oily and who are effusive, tend to be thought of as oily and unctuous, right? They're perceived as insincere, right? um because because of this, we think, at least as women, we think that men don't have emotions, right? That they just that just, there's nothing going on in there, right? But in reality, I think that men attach to women, to their relationships, whether it's the parent-child relationship, the husband-wife relationship, the friend relationship. They attach even more fiercely than women do, right? Even more intensely than women do. And the loss of those things affects them even more than it affects women, except they don't express it in ways that we necessarily recognize, right?
Yeah, but the way to, I mean, once men understand what's going on, it's so many, I guess by now thousands of men have undergone this revelation of understanding, what they are as men and what women are as women. And, quite frankly, I said this a long time ago, you can either love women or you can understand them. I don't think you can really do both. And
Oh, I think you can do both. I
can
think you
okay.
can.
I'll
I
disagree with you on that one.
No, I think that you can understand anybody and still
Well, okay.
you know
I mean, I just maybe,
have
but
deep feelings, affection,
mm,
longing, all of those things for that person. Um, you can totally understand. I think you can understand women and still love them. That doesn't necessarily mean
I think
you're going to sacrifice for them
yeah. Well,
and
I think that's the
have
thing is I basically I know that any relationship with a woman is just it's trade and barter. It's me doing stuff for blowjobs, blah 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 blah. There's nothing about I can understand the transaction. I can analyze the transaction. There's nothing about the transaction I find, you know, compelling. There's no, I don't, it's
The
just a business
metaphysical,
transaction. I mean, I don't
the
see
metaphysical, the metaphysical aspect that you were always taught existed, the romantic
the
aspect.
neurochemistry. Yeah,
Well, the romantic, no, not the neurochemistry, the all of the poetry
yeah,
and the
yeah. I used to
culture
be that guy 10 years ago.
around
Sure.
that, right? All of those things, it's transcendental,
Yeah.
right? And I remember reading a romance novel when I was a teenager, and this author, I don't think she had a thesaurus, and at the end of three different chapters, um, that ended in a sex scene, right? It ended with as she awoke on love's transcendental shores or something like that, right? It was love's transcendental something, right? And I was just like,
But I
who
think we can't.
believes this hokum? Like, I'm just reading this for the nitty gritty, right? And like, who believes that this is transcendental? I mean, like, yes, loving somebody, having affection for somebody, having sort of a relationship, our relationships define us. And they, how we behave in those relationships also defines us. But transcendental?
Well, I think a lot of years and eons ago, I was this way too, and I think a lot of men are. I think it's the metaphysics. I'm sorry, but at least for myself, and I've spoken on. I mean, you get rid of the metaphysics, and like I said, it's just a business transaction, and it's a
Well, I
question of
mean,
whether
but
you want to get in.
here's the thing. Men are so susceptible to that because the chemicals that basically, send the logical part of their brain offline when they fall for a woman, right?
Well,
Those
okay, but
those
here I
chemicals
have
are
a
intense.
surefire. Any men listening, I'll give you a surefire way of countering this. Every time you're about to, fall for a girl, I want you to think about all the nagging your exes did, the stress they gave you, the torment they put you through, and then you're gonna think, man, 20 minutes of sex just once a day, that's not really worth it, probably. I mean,
Oh, once a day, those poor guys.
well, depending on the relationship, of course. I mean, I look. It's just cost benefit, and so I stand by what I say. I mean, I'm not really sure what I could. I mean, the kinds of. I mean, what does it even? I don't even know what that means. These days, you love a woman. I mean, you're the only female I can have an interesting conversation with off the top of my head. We only talk once a year, so I mean, I don't even know what that means.
Oh,
Love.
God. Like my boyfriend, when he was describing things to me early on, right? And there was we entered into the relationship as a casual sex thing, and then it kind of turned into something more. And he was describing to me how he felt. And he said, hanging out with you is like hanging out with my best buddy, except there's all this sexual tension and all of this other stuff added to it, right? And so much of it is really like, I mean, like our relationship is like a road movie. It's just it's we're just chums, we're pals, we're just best friends with a huge amount of sexual tension, right? And because of that, we can have all kinds of really difficult conversations. I mean, he will take issue with, you know, how I am with my kids, and and how I keep my house, and this I'm not really, he's wondering if this is, this thing that I do is really, the best thing, blah blah blah. And so many women in a relationship would take enormous umbrage at that. And I just think, okay, well, this is my friend talking to me here.
Yeah, fair
And
enough. I mean, maybe in some other plane of existence, I'm
well, but I don't think a lot of women are capable of that.
yeah,
I
I think that's the point. I mean, this is going back to the whole Nawald thing. I mean, I I just don't I just can't think of any scenario where that would arise. I mean, I'm not I'm no offense, Karen. I don't I'm not a girl rights what worshiper. I mean, I like
No,
talking to you. But I don't want a relationship with you. I'm just saying that something comparable. I don't even know I want that because I know you're still a woman at the end of the day. You still, you still put demands on Mike. He's got to do certain things, and to keep you satisfied. I'm not. I know you're a woman. I mean, I know you're an aware woman, but you got you got your requirements as well, and yeah,
of course I do.
and for me, I just life's a lot better without living for those requirements. And I know any relationship I would have with a woman is going to have them. And this is a question of how much do I want to give of myself for those requirements or not. And every time I think about it, um, I come back to it's just better going solo.
It's really a matter of it's not so much how much you are required to give, it's how much you get back.
Well, there's that too.
Um,
I mean, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
because that's what you think about when you pass my last and final relationship, where I just think I did all this shit for her, and I got maybe a total of 3 blowjobs, 2 sandwiches, and she cooked something for me once, and yeah, just kind of, and I spent tons of money. It's just no. I mean,
See, and Mike, he'll say, "Can you get me some blueberries?" And I'll say, "I'm kind of in the middle of something," and he'll say, "But they taste better when you get them for me." I'll be like, "Oh, fuck, it only takes me 30 seconds. All right."
I guess. I just, like I said, for myself, I can't envision. I mean, besides the Girl Writes What prototype, I know there you probably have all these guys who want to marry and stuff. I'm not one of them,
No, no.
but
I think a lot of the guys who say that they, would want to marry me or whatever, they wouldn't know what to do with me. Uh, it's
they want
been
to
a
marry your symbolism, I guess,
well,
right?
it's been a common thread in my life. I mean, I have always been the dumpy. I have only been the dumper once.
Maybe that's because you're more masculine.
That yeah,
That's all.
yeah. I think that that's really
Uh,
what it is these guys kind of wake up after a while, after the sexual tension is a little bit alleviated, and they go, "Who is this? I
yeah.
somehow I'm just not feeling that way anymore." Right? So, with Mike, it was different. He and I are very, very well suited. So personality wise.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have a good marriage, and I wish you all the best. But for me, I don't even know what that means. But I don't think I can quote unquote love a woman. I'm not sure what that means, but whatever. Anyway, it's really late here, guys. That is, it's getting approaching midnight where I am. So
And we've been talking for 2 hours. Oh my God.
2 hours, 11 minutes, and 10 seconds. So I will stop the recording here. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I haven't talked to Karen in a long time, so that was
It's
really
been
good.
it's been ages.
It's been
Yeah, no, it was
over a
nice
year,
chat.
yes. It's been over a year. So it was really good catching up. I hope you enjoy the talk. And any MRM related announcements you want to make? Because
Oh, well, there is one thing. Sage Gerard, aka Victor Zen on YouTube, he is the president of Kennesaw State University Men, which is an official student organization dealing with men and men's issues. And he is hosting an educational equity conference on November 1st, and he's got a Fund Anything campaign called Male-Students-in-Peril to raise the funds for that. I think he was under the impression that as an official organization, he would be eligible for funding from the university, but after he started, organizing this conference, they told him, "Oh, you have to be official for over a year before you get funding." So he's having to try and scrape up the cost for that. And if all goes well and he gets all of the funding that he needs, I and Janice Fiamengo and Paul Elam and Jonathan Taylor of A Voice for Male Students will be speaking at that conference. So um, if anybody cares to donate, that would be awesome. Other than that, I don't have anything on my immediate roster. I've got a collaboration in the works with somebody that many of you might know, but I am not at liberty to say who or what it is.
Damn.
But I'll be, announcing that fairly soon. So
Okay, that sounds interesting. Not at liberty to talk about. That's really
I
good.
am not. It's top secret.
Okay, top secret. Okay, so Karen's got a top secret project. That means, oh, big news, big
If I
news.
told you, then I'd have to kill you.
Okay.
All right.
All right, guys, I am stopping the recording for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you probably soon. God's willing. Take care.